we'll just give it a couple moments.
I see it on Caster that it seems like it's happening. There you are, Mr. Gibbs.
Oh, let's move on to quest that quickly as possible.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to And the Beat Goes On. We are so excited to be with you guys again today. We are really just pumped to have on with us Mr. Stacey Gibbs. Welcome. Thank you so much for being with us today. We're super excited. We're really excited. And so what we're going to do really quickly, just as we get started here, we're just going to all introduce ourselves, and then we'll get right into it today for our episode of And the Beat Goes On. So first, my name is Ariana Harley Emerson. I'm the Director of Music and Operations here at the Choir School, and happy to be hosting with you today. Why don't we go next to Vania?
Hey, hi, my name is Vania. I've been at the choir school for 2 years, and something I love most about the choir school is all the opportunities that I get to have there and the friends that I've made so far.
Awesome. And Miss Rayon.
Hi, my name is Rayon Walker. I have been at the choir school for about 7.5-ish years. One thing that I love about the choir school is it's like a second family. Pretty much opportunities and stuff that they make you have, that lets you have and stuff. It's a great way to provide your career and be successful in life.
Awesome, thank you. And then we also have some of our staff members on the line today. We've got Alex. Do you want to say hello?
Hello, my name's Alex de Aguiar-Reuter. I have been with the choir school as a choral scholar for 3 seasons, and I'm coming up on finishing up my first year as the marketing and development associate here.
Awesome. And Miss Pasco.
Hi, I'm Brittany Pasco. I'm the Director of Education and Assistant Conductor at the Choir School of Delaware.
Awesome. So we have Mr. Gibbs on today. We are so excited. We are like this, when we got this confirmed, I was like squealing like one of the kids. I was so excited. It was like Christmas morning. So thank you so much for agreeing to come on. We're really big fans. We're super excited. And we know a lot of our followers are also excited to have you on. So really welcome. It is such an honor to have you on the show today. First, we just want to check in and see how are you doing. So how's life? How are you coping through this pandemic? And how are you staying musical?
Well, you know, I'm well, and thank you for the invitation, first of all. I'm doing well during this process, during this challenging time. It's about adjustments. It's about learning to do things differently. So that in itself has proven to be very advantageous to me, because the downtime has been an absolutely wonderful amount of time to create and to introduce musical thoughts and ideas and develop concepts. So I'm really excited about that. So it's been good for me.
Good.
I'm going to say to the positive of that. It's been good for me. Yes. Good.
That's always good to hear. And I also think that, like, you know, I think we're seeing a lot lot of increased creativity that is happening during this period of time. And I think that when history reflects on this episode, shall we say, that hopefully it'll be something like the Renaissance, maybe, you know, a lot of new artwork, musical, visual, you know, all in all. So that's what I'm hoping for, because it hasn't been a good opportunity to do that. So we want to start off and just kind of jump off here and get to some of the questions that we have. So why don't we start with Vania? What questions do you have for Mr. Gibbs today?
I was curious as to why you arrange more pieces than you compose your own.
Well, the genre of the spiritual, as it's been passed down through the ages, is of music and with no known origin. We have a few compositions, you know, by John William Dawson and Chester Hairston, who actually composed spirituals, but most of them are arranged. So even the ones that we're familiar with come to us arranged. So I want to continue that legacy because I believe this genre of music is so vital to choral music here and abroad. So I'm probably going to stay in that lane, even though I might branch out and do some different things as well.
Awesome. And can you tell us a little bit about, like, how do you kind of how do you decide which spirituals you're arranging? How do you, what's the approach? Like when you sit down and you're going to arrange a spiritual, like, how do you know which one's right? There are so many, how does that work?
Well, there are some that you just want to do, but then I believe I try to tap into those that are done as much. And that's a task in itself. You look at that and you look at things that are recommended or suggested by your colleagues that has a role in it. Sometimes you'll be inspired just by watching something on TV, a new broadcast. The inspiration can come from so many various places. So I don't have a set formula for doing that, but it has to speak to me. Actually, a few of my favorites have been suggestions by others. So I just try to keep the mind open to receive.
Awesome. And like when you start like arranging a spiritual, how do you kind of start? Like, where's the starting place? Like, do you just sort of like, here's the melody, let me figure out how I'm going to harmonize it? Like, what's that compositional process look like?
Well, the first thing I do, I probably start mental writing the first thing for a few weeks. And then when I opened up the software to begin writing, the first thing I probably begin is, what is my motive? What is my driving motive in this? And I try to develop it from there and to infuse things that one wouldn't expect. I try to keep the ear in anticipation what's going to happen next. And for my colleagues, I have been told this on several occasions, they generally take a new score and they open it up because they want to see what's at the end. So
yeah,
that's the way that happens. For me.
Awesome. And do anyone else on the call have like questions about how like the start of that compositional process works?
Well, I'm curious actually about, when you first started arranging and you had your first piece published, the story behind that piece. What piece was it? The first one that you had published ever, and why it was that one?
Well, my high school choir director was very adamant about programming my music. And she would always say, Nina Scott in Detroit, Michigan, would often say, well, somebody needs to hear this and she's going to keep singing it. And so that's what she did. And then Dr. Eugene Rogers at University of Michigan, he heard and he contacted her and asked, how do you get in touch with Stacey? You're getting all this music that no one else has. And I met Eugene and had a conversation with him. And at that point, I had just arranged Lord, If I Got My Ticket, which was my first published piece. And he sent that to a colleague of his, Paul Smith, in California. And a few months later, it was being developed to be published. That's my story.
That's amazing. And that's one of our like favorite pieces too, The Lord If I Get My Ticket.
Oh, wow.
It just sings so well, and we love that. Any other questions about the compositional process or kind of how Mr. Gibbs got started? Awesome. So when you are like how do you create like these a cappella works? Because without piano, like how I know, how do you do it? How do you make it all work so well without accompaniment?
Well, I believe the voice is just one of the greatest instruments that we know. And it's capable of doing so many different things, so many different layers, so many different textures. So that's the easy part. My thing is to keep the energy alive. That is my goal. Whether I succeed or not, that is definitely my goal. But the acapella sound in the natural state of the spiritual, being in the evolution from the word songs, it's just innate for me. I believe it has come so naturally. So I don't have a formula. I don't have this scientific answer to give you to say, oh, this is this, and I sounded profound and intelligent. It's really just based on my love for this genre of music.
Awesome.
And a little theory doesn't hurt any.
There you go. Right. Absolutely. Vania, what other questions might you have?
I wanted to know how you first got involved in music when you were younger.
Well, I was a chorister like most of us were. It started in middle school, started singing, and I remember at a young age watching the Hall Johnson, listening to and watching the movie Cabin in the Sky with the Hall Johnson Choir, and at that point I knew that I had fallen in love with the spiritual. Didn't know that I was going to be arranging, didn't know any of this part of my life, but it all began there. When William Dawson entered that Good News, and I mean, it's just still as classic as it was, then as it is now. So that's how I fell in love. Yes.
Wow. And can you tell us what when you were a chorister, like what kind of choirs were you singing in? Were you singing in like church choirs, school choirs, both, or kind of what did music making look like when you were growing up?
It was definitely both, and I enjoyed both. But when I began to sing, and from a choral perspective, the more refined, the different genres that we approached, that was what really piqued my interest in music.
Awesome.
So that's how it happened for me.
Awesome. That's very, very, very cool. And do you remember, I always like to ask people this, do you remember like your first choir experience or who that first choir director was?
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. And you can't forget that, because that was my first introduction to music. So everything that's happened from meeting people, very, very accomplished people in their craft, it has just developed. I remember as a young man in college, meeting William Dawson and being in contact with Robert Shaw. Those were just monumental moments that I'll just never forget. That they totally impacted my writing career. Absolutely.
Great, awesome. And Rayon, I'm glad that you were able to jump back on. I know with Zoom, every call it seems like I'm dropping off. I've been having technical difficulties myself. But do you have any questions for Mr. Gibbs so far?
Yes, I do. My first question was what inspired you to get into music? Like, what was your first experience with music? What made you do the things that you're doing now with music?
Well, I came from a singing family, so we sang in church often. Nothing brought my mother more joy than watching her children, come together and sing. So it started there, and I think that's probably where my ear began to hear harmony and notes and that type of thing. Even though I didn't know what that was from a technical point of view, but that's where it began. I think it had to be always a part of me. A colleague of mine from college, she'd say, music, I didn't choose music, music chose me. And that was just the way she always stated that. And I thought that was really interesting because I don't know where I would be without music, without a song. I just don't know what kind of life that would be. And I don't care to find out.
I hear you on that one for sure. And I guess one of my other questions is like, when you were coming up in your school choirs and things like that, were they mostly like from the kind of European tradition of choral music, or like what was kind of the choral program like when you were growing up outside of church?
Well, it was very eclectic. You know, we sang the classics, you know, down to the gospel. So it was not one dimensional. And that is the beauty of choral music. And even I look for that today, even as I listen to all of the amazing choirs that I've had the opportunity to work with and to listen to perform. I'm looking for that musical journey. We have to go somewhere. I'm not an advocate of a one-dimensional program. Give me a variety of things because I believe that produces a better performance. So that's
Agreed.
what I look for. Yes,
that makes
absolutely.
a lot of sense. And are there any specific composers that you feel like that you just really loved their work and you try to kind of you know, write in a style that's similar to them, or somehow impacted you in a major way?
Well, I can definitely mention some that have impacted me. So let me answer that part of your question first. Probably Nuke Neistat. I love the work of Mendelssohn, Randall Thompson, those Moses and Hall Johnson. Those were just I admired their work so much. They just inspired me to ever want to be an ever developing writer. So that definitely comes into play. I don't have as far as emulating, not so much, because the whole part of this is, and I understand, and I recommend this to any future composer or arranger, publishers are not looking for you to emulate someone. They want to hear your voice, your perspective. They're looking for your individuality has to shine through. If everyone's doing the same thing, the first thing that we do as we analyze music is to say, oh, that sounds just like. So I work really hard to stay away from that sounds just like.
Absolutely. And when you were kind of like on the collegiate level, were you doing music then? Tell us like what did that look like? How did you kind of formally study, you know, as you were preparing, I guess, till...
Well, okay, sure. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
What I thought that I wanted to be, I thought I would be direct choirs for 30 years and retire and kick back and enjoy. My life did not take that path, you know, and that's okay. But I learned that having worked outside the choral arena, the educational arena, and now that I'm involved with doing clinics and workshops and these types of things, I feel like I have the best of both worlds. So I didn't know, for one, had no idea that my music would do anything that it has done. And just feels pretty grateful and pretty blessed about it. It was not on my career path. It was never on my career path to be a composer. That's why you have to listen to the Almighty, because he knew what I didn't know.
To that end, you've done some pretty amazing, or your music has been performed in some pretty amazing places, not the least of which was President Obama's second inauguration. Could you tell me a little bit about that experience? Were you invited to be present? Were you conducting? Like what was that about?
You know, the interesting about that is, first, I didn't know it was being programmed. 2, didn't know that they were going to be there. 3, I didn't find out till after the fact. And so I was just reading, and I said, President Obama, way over in Bueller. Then I tapped into the article. I said, oh my goodness, I didn't even know. I didn't know.
Wow.
But I was happy. Sometimes good things come from not knowing. So I accept all of that.
Yeah. I hope you got a little bump in sales on that particular piece after that.
Well, I have to say, if there was ever a pivotal piece of music that opened up to a wider audience of conductors and singers, that had to come with Way Over in Beulah Land. I never in a million years could have thought that it would do what it has done. So I feel pretty fortunate about that.
That's
Well,
another
great.
one of our favorite pieces for sure. I like that opening, and then how it kind of just takes off is just. I think it's really great. And while you're like talking about that piece, can you tell us what that piece is talking about? Way Over in Beulah Land, like what is that spiritual about?
Well, I believe it is definitely a coded spiritual, and I believe that for the oppressed and enslaved, it was about making it to freedom, and freedom in two ways: freedom in heaven, which was what they idealized as being no longer tormented, and the second part was simply making it to the north where they had a chance to be and live. So that is really the story behind it. But for me, musically, just to give you a little insight of something, I submitted Way Over in Beulah Land to my publisher, and about 5-6 months had passed. And I said, oh, well, they didn't like that one. And I wasn't going to bring up that they didn't like that one. Who wants to hear that, right? So I got a call about December saying Bruce Rogers, who's at Mount San Antonio in California, said Bruce is performing this at ACDA in March 2007. That was in Miami. And I said, what? He says, you got to get this edited right now. And I said, are you kidding me? I didn't have a chance to fall in love with a piece of music, you know? So Beulah Land and I, we eloped because I had to get it out and edited today. So there was no courtship. There was no courtship whatsoever. So, but it turned out to be the greatest thing. And after that hit and it landed, then it was just this domino effect of goodness and blessing. So that is the behind the scenes story of Way Over in Beulah Land.
Wow, that's just like astonishing. And it, like what you're saying about like when a piece hits and it's hot, and there's no way it seems to anticipate that, because I remember, you know, looking at choral works and all of that, and then all of a sudden it was like, who's this Stacey Gibbs? Who is she? And like, and then I was like, oh, it's not a she. My God, he's great, you know. And then it was just so great, and like hearing like your take on pieces that we had already, you know, had heard arranged before, like Wade in the Water, and heard that so many different ways, and just kind of what you did with that. It's just been such a pleasure to be able to listen and get to hear about some of those pieces that you've done. Now, there's one piece in particular that I want to ask you about. I think our favorite piece, well, perhaps mine, is essentially it is Witness. Like there's just a lot of there's just so much going on in that piece. Can you talk to us about it and kind of you know, what is going on there?
Well, Witness was definitely inspired by the late great Hall Johnson. When I began to compose and began to think about things that I wanted to set, I wanted to honor what he was from an inspirational perspective as far as my work is concerned. I believe that I love the story. I love the spirituals that tell a story. And so that was pretty involved. And then I just wanted to give it a rhythmic pulse that I felt was energetic, that was as addictive as I could make it. And so that was my goal as I began to set that. And when I began to write it, the first thing that I came up with was the who will be witness. And when I had that, the rest was gravy. I just had fun until I finished it.
It just feels so great. Like if anyone, that's one of the pieces I wish that every choir would sing. It just
thank you.
It's just like the rhythmic energy is just so great. And there's some intricate part writing going on that's in there. I remember when we did a session for the Pittsburgh ACDA in 2018, and I remember as we had done the piece previously, but when we were really delving in and breaking it down, just kind of the exchange and the ending section and some of the oohs and all, there's a lot going on, and like each time it was like peeling the layers of an onion. There was just always more to do and more work and more discoveries about what was, you know, how to approach the piece and how to better understand it. So we absolutely loved that piece. So for folks who have not heard that piece before, we're going to play a little bit of that piece, of a performance that we did of this piece a couple years ago. This is a video just from one of our parents took it from a cell phone. So it's not like an overly produced video and it's a little blurry and all that, but I think it's a great, it's such a great showpiece. It's definitely our favorite. And we're going to have a conversation after it about how you approach spirituals and how you sing spirituals. So the very first thing I kind of want to just like point out to people is that we have two different soloists who are two different races, and we're going to then talk about the performance practice of spirituals, who can sing them, who owns them, how to make your choir, you know, what's the kind of performance practice of the genre and how to kind of make things happen. So I thought this would be a really good example of all of that, and we can kind of get your thoughts on that. So here we go. This is Stacey Gibbs's Witness.
Oh, my Lord.
Such a wonderful piece of music. It's so
Well,
fun.
thank you. Thank you.
We love like the storytelling aspect of it. For those who don't know the story of Witness, it kind of goes through kind of biblical places, saying about like essentially like, why am I going to be a witness, referring to these other people. And it's just such a great piece to kind of work on and to kind of the illusions and all of that. Now, with approaching a piece like this, let's talk about the performance practice. What are some of the best ways that we as choir directors can get our choirs to really sing this style well?
Well, I think that there are just two premises that should be always considered. The music must always be honest, and the music must always be authentic. And I think in preparation of performing the concert spirituals, you follow the same guidelines that you were if you were doing a German piece, if you were singing an Italian piece, or you're singing a 21st century art songs, you're doing a jazz song. You have to be true to the genre. And I think once any conductor and choir embraces that, you're well on your way. And it's okay to do your research in singing the spiritual just as you would if you were doing a Cuban piece of music. Mm-hmm. So I believe that should be the case. With what you all did specifically that I really enjoyed was you didn't sing at a fast-paced tempo.
I always talk about that all the time. And just really for folks who are watching, this is something I always like to say to the choir. One, it's not as spiritual if it doesn't sound like you've been through it, number one. And number two, you have to remember, like if these were work songs and you were singing at the pace that you were working, at what pace do you think is sustainable in those fields? And so that's definitely something that we talk a lot about in trying to find what that should be feeling like. But I mean, in general, do you feel like that oftentimes spirituals are taken too fast? I do.
But on the other side of that coin, Ariane, I believe when it comes to my music, I'd like to leave it open for the conductors to interpret. I don't want to put so many things in the score that every time I hear it, it sounds exactly the same. Mm-hmm. Not interested. My publishers may not want to hear a lot of that from time to time, but I have to give you my truth because I believe that students have musical ideas, the singers have musical ideas, the conductors have years of experience and training. And just because it's set like this, it's just a canvas. And I just like to see all the nuances and the colors and the layering that can be added to that. So I don't ever want them to feel restricted. Well, he wrote this and that's the only way to do it. That is not my goal. My goal is to go onto YouTube and say, I've never heard this before, and say, they did that. That is so taken. I'm going to remember that the next time I coach or clinic it. Mm-hmm. And I believe that is what music is. It's ever evolving. So many different musical ways to approach it. And to say something is absolutely wrong, especially in this genre of music, don't know if that's really the best approach to it.
And then I know one of the big kind of hot topics in choral music right now has to do with cultural appropriation. And so when we consider cultural appropriation and singing spirituals and gospel or whatever genre, like what do you think? Like, how should we prepare? Does anyone kind of group or people own, any particular genre? Like, what are your thoughts and ideas? And I know people are kind of all over the place.
And they are. And I believe I'm going to always be respectful to whatever your perspective is. Now, whether I agree with it or not, I am of the mindset that music is for people, regardless of genre. And I say that because I'm going to speak from my perspective first. On my iPad, there's everything from classical to country. And I don't believe that I have to be restricted to like a genre of music because somebody deems it appropriate. If music is not sung by the masses, then I don't know how we ever really reunite. I don't know how we ever become sensitive to other cultures and other approaches to music. And if we forget that while we're trying to be quote unquote politically correct, we're losing out the message and the meaning of the music. And that can never be more important. Mm-hmm. Music is about impacting lives. And it does things that sometimes we don't even realize it's doing for us and to those who are listening to us. So I believe we have a responsibility to present it in the best fashion possible. And if you're unfamiliar with the genre, we do like we always do. We have colleagues all over the world. We pick up the phone and we consult with them so that we're more knowledgeable, because the more knowledgeable we are, we pass that knowledge on to the students. And that is our responsibility. I was recently asked, should a white person, Caucasian, be able to sing a spiritual? And I said, absolutely. Well, why do you feel like that? I said, because there's a thing called white slaves. They exist in the world. If you're going to do your research. So music is available for people. And just because you might be of a different ethnicity does not mean you're not allowed to sing it. And it doesn't mean you're disrespectful. Now, on the other side of the coin, conductors and educators such as yourself, it is your responsibility to educate your students about a variety of genres of music. That's your job. That's what a university or school or whatever is paying you to do. So to not do that, you're not really fulfilling your obligations as you should. Music is for people, and people can sing whatever genre of music they choose to. That is how I feel about that.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that. I think that's really helpful. And particularly the part about if you have questions or you want to know how to bring more kind of authenticity to the piece, just pick up the phone,
Right.
There are a lot of people who would be happy to take the calls.
Absolutely.
So Vania, I want to bounce back to you to see if you have any more questions for Mr. Gibbs today as we get ready and close out today.
I wanted to ask earlier also, how do you decide which pieces you are going to arrange?
Well, it's a process of I don't know that there's a really formula. I try to look at scores. I try to read and look at spirituals. There were so many that were done to say, what can I do? What do I feel like I can breathe new life to? What do I feel like I can approach and look at differently? So I wish I had this wonderful answer for you. I just have to go by what I feel inspired to do. And then hopefully my colleagues will give me recommendations, because I've always asked them, what do you think should be set? Because sometimes they will think of something you didn't even think of. Right. And that's happened to me on more than one occasion. So I just try to keep an open mind and look at it and say, hey, this hasn't been done. What is this out here? I've not seen a lot of that, and I'll generally try to maybe select that. It hasn't been so arranged. I don't think the world needs another Did My Lord Deliver Daniel.
You say that now. You say that now.
And then one comes along after the world has rested from it, and you're like, oh, and then it's fresh all over again. And that's the beauty of this genre of music. Mm-hmm. So never say never, right?
There you go. I think there's a question coming in from one of our Facebook users, Alex.
Yes. So there's a question from Maestra Dawala Simmons Burke, Director of Choral and Vocal Studies at Winston-Salem State University, excuse me. And she asks, are there performances of your arrangements of spirituals by specific choirs that you credit with the success, with your general success? If so, which arrangements and what choirs?
Okay, wow, that's a pretty easy. That's a pretty easy one. First of all, I would probably say, may I name a few? May I name 2 or 3? Is that okay?
It's your stage.
Okay, thank you. I would say Bruce Rogers with Way Over in Beulah Land was just on a phenomenal launch. Then a great performance definitely drives sales. And so I believe that when Joe Mike Scheibe at USC performed Ezekiel and Rock of My Soul. Those were just incredible launches. And definitely Winston-Salem State, when they performed My Rock in Jerusalem, just was so very, very impactful. Their rendering of it, the way they approached that, all those conductors are just amazingly talented. And I'm glad that they like me. How about that, Alex?
Well, we like you too. So hopefully
Thank you so much.
Bring it to that level one day.
Awesome.
Alrighty. Yes.
I'm going to see if there are any last questions before we go to our quarantine quiz. I think Miss Rayon froze. We were having some technical difficulties.
Yes, we are definitely.
So, but are there any other questions that anyone has? I think I could hear you, Rayon.
Okay, I'm sorry about my screen. I don't know what's going on. I can't see you guys, but I know you guys can hear me. So,
Yes.
One of my questions was, what was the challenge? Like, what is the challenge for you when you're composing and like arranging your music?
I don't look at it. I don't look at it as a challenge.
Okay.
I look at it as an opportunity to develop from another perspective.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah. I don't look at it as a challenge, because to be able to do music is just a major gift in itself, and to have your colleagues, known and unknown, appreciate or see value in what you're doing is the biggest blessing of it all. So, challenge? No, not a challenge.
Okay.
And as we get ready to wrap up here, what is the best piece of advice that you could give us, musical, non-musical, it doesn't really matter, about life, for our students who are in our program? Like, what is a piece of advice that you might have for us?
That anytime you're giving anything good, to give it away.
I like that. I really like that. That's beautiful. That is really, really beautiful. Well, we have been so thrilled to have this conversation. I could ask so many questions. This is like my area of like research. So I'm
Awesome.
very fascinated, and like all of this, but I know that folks will have to get on with their day. So we're going to get ready, and we're going to go to our quarantine quiz, which is a quick little 90-second, a minute and a half bit that we have, where it's basically a game of nose goes. We'll all play together. So we'll ask silly things about things you may or may not have done during this period of isolation and social distancing. And so it's just fun and lighthearted. I've got this timer here. When the timer goes off, it will reveal the picture of a duck, which I think is a lot of fun. So I believe, Alex, you're reading the questions for us today?
Sure thing.
Great. Let me just put 90 seconds on the clock here. All righty. And you'll know when time's out when you see the picture of the duck and it starts to quack and all that fun stuff. So here we go.
All right. Nose goes if you have skipped online school because your internet was down.
No.
Joined a virtual party.
Not yet. Not yet.
Yes.
Morphed into a nocturnal being.
Somewhat.
Lost track of days of the week.
Absolutely.
Logged onto Zoom with business attire on the top and pajama bottoms or something else on the bottom.
Yes.
Spoken to a friend you haven't caught up with in a while.
Absolutely.
Binge watched a show in 48 hours or less. Shopped online for something you definitely did not need.
Amen.
Hid away in your room because your family was driving you bonkers.
Yes, definitely.
Buy snacks for the week and run out a day or two after going to the store.
Those are good ones, though. That's a good one.
Let's see. Worked from your bed.
Yes.
Forgot to brush your teeth.
No.
And we're all out of time. Well,
That's a good one.
Stacey, thank you so much. Thank you so much for being on today. We really had a great time. If people want to catch up with you, can you tell us the best way that people can be in contact with you or catch up with you?
Sure. My email address is posted on Facebook, and my website will be www.staceyvgibbs.com. Will be up in about 10 days.
Ooh,
so that'll
nice.
be good. And I recently started a group, and we call ourselves Just Music. We just released our first EP and looking to do a full project. It was supposed to be later this year, so it's now in 2021. We've had to adjust, and so we'll be putting out information about that. So I'm excited about some things happening in the future. Absolutely.
Awesome. And again, also congratulations on your project with the King Singers. We ran out of time to talk about that today, but that's pretty huge. I mean, like, when I saw that the King Singers were going to be singing, Works by Stacey Gibbs, I nearly passed out. So a huge congratulations.
Well, thank you.
That's amazing.
Pick up the CD.
Everyone should check it out. What was that?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I was blessed with three numbers on that CD. So pick it up. I think they did a phenomenal job. Just a great group of guys to work with.
Yeah, they are incredible. Just amazing.
Absolutely.
Thank you again. I want to thank
you.
Oh my gosh, thank you. And thank Vania. Thank you for joining us today. And Rayon, hanging in there even with our technical difficulties. And of course, Brittany and Alex, thank you guys for joining us. So our next episode of And the Beat Goes On is on Thursday at noon. And we'll be talking to Mr. Ivo Antonini, whose works are just so cool. So we hope that you will log in with us and talk about and we'll be talking about his compositional work, and we'll be talking about also the influence of jazz in his choral writing, which will be really cool to talk about. So thank you guys again.
Thank you.
And for everyone watching on Facebook, thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you guys soon.